Joe Biden's Justice Department is apparently planning on rescheduling marijuana as a lower risk drug. This comes from CNN. And yeah, apparently it's not just a plan. It's a literal command from the administration to reclassify weed as a lower risk substance. I do know there are some people who are worried about this. I know that like Fox News have been running a lot of segments lately about weed being dangerous or whatever. So I know that this is going to make some people upset. You know, I did find this source here talking about marijuana. And from what I can tell in general, you know, weed doesn't seem to be the most harmful drug you could do. Like of all the hard drugs, it's certainly the softest. The CDC has some stuff here about it. You know, it can affect your mental health in some ways. Right? Like, you know, and of course here it talks about how it inhibits, you know, your, you know, various brain functions, which is normal, right? For drugs that put you under the influence. So that's not necessarily out of the ordinary. You could say similar things about alcohol, to be honest. And of course, we've got stuff with like, you know, heart and lung health when it comes to, you know, inhaling weed through like a vape or smoking or something. Especially vaping. I don't think you do not want to vape weed. You don't want to vape any sort of oil because the molecules become unstable and it really messes with your lungs in very bad ways. That's actually vaping. I think vaping weed oil is actually like the primary cause of like lung injuries for people who vape, if I'm not mistaken. I did research on that a while ago, so I'm not just pulling it out of my hair there. Now, here's the thing that I think is most interesting about this is mental health. Marijuana use has been linked to social anxiety, depression, suicide, and schizophrenia. Scientists don't know yet whether marijuana use directly causes these health issues, but it may make symptoms more severe. So I think that this paragraph is both interesting and important. So I personally think that if marijuana was a direct cause for these things, then we would have found a link to it that was a bit stronger than what this paragraph indicates by now. Therefore, can we say that weed is like incredibly dangerous? I frankly don't think it's incredibly dangerous. However, you know, the link is not the most well known. So it's hard to recommend someone to get into something like weed when it has a loose connection to these sorts of things and we don't yet know exactly what the link is between you know, weed and things like depression, suicide, schizophrenia. Like, for example, like is there comorbidity? Basically, like, are people taking marijuana to deal with social anxiety, to deal with depression, to deal with suicide, to deal with schizophrenia, or are those things being brought on by the marijuana itself? What this paragraph is indicating is not clear. It's not clear, but it's possible that it is causing those side effects. I have heard some anecdotal stories of it causing schizophrenia in some people, but every single person who has talked about those stories has also pointed out that, hey, people who are taking weed now are taking in more than they have in the past, especially with its legalization and people taking it orally through an edible. I think there was another section here. Oh yes, eating edibles, foods and drinks that contain marijuana can take longer to kick in compared to smoking marijuana. The delayed effect of consuming edibles may increase the risk of consuming too much, which can lead to poisoning or serious injury. So it makes sense that if people are like doing tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of marijuana, that it also increases their risk for you know, all these mental health issues, where if they were taking a more appropriate amount, then they wouldn't really have anything to worry about. So is this something I'm going to fearmonger over and get all mad and upset about? No. You guys know me. I am a huge like personal rights and personal freedoms dude. So I'm not going to get all mad about certain drugs being legalized. However, I think that Portland, Oregon has shown us that you can't just run around legalizing all drugs. And I do think that having age limits for doing certain drugs would still be a good thing. Like, you shouldn't be able to like do weed if you're under like 21. That'd be my opinion. But should weed necessarily be a crime? You could also make the case for legalizing, like having like an under the influence limit. If you could do some sort of test to see how much weed like is in your system. I don't know how that sort of system would be administered, because I do think that like if you're taking like tons and tons and tons of weed and you're just like out in the public, like wilding out, that is a problem. That's a problem. And that is a problem that you see in some states that have gone too far with decriminalization of drugs. So maybe something like that would be fair. Because if you're all like, you know, high in your room, like then you're not really like harming anyone necessarily. But, you know, if you're just out in the street, you know, homeless and doing weed, like that's not a great combination, to be honest. So that's my general thoughts on the whole subject. I do not feel particularly strongly about weed, although I don't think that it should be completely banned. I think that some people should be able to use it for recreational use in certain contexts if they're doing so responsibly. But I'm not one to want the government to be like, you know, kicking in people's doors and then like, I don't know, checking their body to see if they're doing weed. Like, I don't think that's appropriate. And I'm not a fan of that.